pleasure to be here as the Ara Güler Museum. I am joined first and foremost by Ms. Çağla Saraç, project director and our leader for the Ara Güler Museum and the Ara Güler Archives and Research Center, and my colleague Ms. Tuana Pulak, exhibitions and project development manager. We have received such a warm welcome in Sofia, and we thank you all for taking the time on a Friday evening to join us here. We wish to, first of all, thank first and foremost the lovely team at Sintezis Gallery, led by Nadia Pavlova and Nikolai Mihov, and their team members, Renee and Nicole. Of course, the owner of Photosynthesis, Mr. Petrus Alexiadis. We also wish to thank Mr. Nikolai Lotliev of the International Meetings of Photography in Plovdiv, who facilitated our arrival in Bulgaria for the first time as our museum just a month ago. And of course, the Embassy of the Republic of Turkey in Sofia, the General Consulate of Turkey, of the Republic of Turkey in Plovdiv, the Sofia University Cultural Center, and finally, last but not least, all of you who are here and everyone who has visited and we hope will visit the exhibition. So today we would like to share with you our efforts into representing Ara Güler and continuing a photographer's legacy, a look into the Archives and Research Center and the Ara Güler Museum. We will first discuss or give some background as to the business model of our institutions and the relationship between Ara Güler and the Doğuş Group. Then we'll look into Ara Güler's work a little bit and the content of the archives with which you may not be very familiar. Then our Archives and Research Center, and finally the museum. So here's Mr. Güler looking very proud in front of his archive boxes, only a very small portion, let us say. We are actually a relatively new institution. In 2016, Ara Güler and Doğuş Group entered into an agreement and founded a company entitled, I'll use this pointer for the first and last time, the Ara Güler Doğuş Sanat ve Müzecilik AŞ, of which Ara Güler served as a partner and chairman of the board until he passed away. And the mission of this company was to, one, preserve all of Ara Güler's archives under one roof, and to promote and further Ara Güler's legacy, and also to advance the art and promote the art of photography in Turkey. Under this company, two non-profit institutions were formed. Firstly, the Ara Güler Archives and Research Center, which is now in Bomontiada and Şişli, activities which began in 2017, and thereafter the Ara Güler Museum, which was established in 2018. Of course, as you can imagine, it's not an easy feat to represent and amass and promote the legacy of such an incredible artist, and to do so, we rely on the support of Doğuş Group, which is one of Turkey's largest private sector conglomerates. It operates across 7 different industries, including automotives, construction, hospitality and retail, technology, media, amongst others, and across 33 countries. And it's a very big proponent and protector of cultural heritage in Turkey as well. Most recently, with its sponsorship of Göbekli Tepe, which is on the UNESCO World Heritage List, and the oldest ritual temple complex in the world. So we are very proud to be under such an umbrella, and it's thanks to their support that these foundations were founded and continue to be active today. We hope all of you are familiar with Ara Güler. I won't go into all the details, but Ara Güler was born in 1928 in his beloved city of Istanbul, of which he became synonymous, and he passed away on October 17, 2018, on his 90th, at 90 years old. As such, he bore witness to 70 of almost the entirety of modern Turkey's history. And he had an incredibly active career, as you can see, a prolific career of over 70 years, starting from the 50s when he was in his early 20s, first with local publications, Yeni İstanbul, Devir Resimli Hayat, and quickly thereafter he became very involved in international publications and organizations such as Time and Life, Parimaç, Stern, and Magnum Photos. Throughout each decade, he contributed to important photo reportages, worked with, again, international institutions, important publications, and of course received many accolades throughout his life, was celebrated both in Turkey and abroad, and one of his, of course, most famous awards or accolades was Master of Leica, which he received in 1962. And here are some of his correspondent card and him in front of the various publications, looking stern but mischievous, as we like to say. So what are the contents of our archives? First of all, I just want to make a quick note that Ara Güler always referred to himself as a photojournalist. He never wanted to accept the title that he was a photographer or an artist, but I'm sure we can all recognize that though it's really hard to separate the two when we look professionally at his work. In addition to the wonderful opportunity to have his original films, negatives, dias, prints, etc., and anything relating to his body of work, we are also the custodians of his art collection, both his photography collection, which we will go into, and also artworks from his contemporaries, which we will also reference. Of course, we have his camera and equipment, original archive boxes, his library, which we love to browse through, and his book maquettes. Really, it's an incredible treasure chest for us, and we feel so lucky and privileged to be the stewards of these. As we all know, Ara Güler is mostly associated with his beloved birthplace and the city which he called his home throughout his life, Istanbul. And we have the distinct pleasure of sharing some of his most well-known and celebrated black and white photography from the 50s and 60s through our exhibition together. You'll recognize some of the images. And throughout his life, he really did capture the beauty and allure of Istanbul, its architecture, the daily life of its citizens, its magical qualities, the changing landscape, historical events, and really served with these photographs and also of Turkey as the visual historical record for Turkey. But that's not the only content of the archives. Of great significance also are Ara Güler's photographs of archaeological sites throughout Turkey, showing the deep heritage, showing Turkey's deep cultural heritage and as the home of many civilizations across time. Here we also have some additional photographs, both black and white and in color, of archaeological sites. Perhaps his most famous archaeological site group is his photographs of aphrodisias. I don't know if you are all familiar with this story, but essentially at age 30 in 1958, Ara Güler is tasked with covering a story for the opening of a dam project in the city of Aydın, a government project. And he's assigned a driver by the municipality there to take him to the site to photograph the dam. He photographs the dam, but he has to take some additional pictures, but by then the light has faded and he needs to come for the second day. So his assigned driver starts taking him to where he's staying, but makes an unfortunate turn and goes up in a different road. It's dark out, nothing can be seen, and finally they say, you know, we're not going to reach the destination tonight, so let us just stay in this village this evening, and tomorrow we'll go back to the dam. As they approach the village, which is without electricity at this time, Ara Güler notices the residents and the coffee house there with the gas lamps, and then realizes that they're sitting atop these Roman columns, just, you know, going about their day or evening, shall we say. And of course, that sparks his interest, and it's not something that he can leave behind. So thanks to this fortuitous accident of his driver, he realizes that there's something here. He asks his driver to bring him back the following morning, and he documents wonderful photographs and spends 3 years trying to get these published. And finally, with this perseverance that is very much true to his approach throughout his life, he is able to get the photographs published in Architectural Review, an English publication. And thanks to these photographs, this village of Geyre then receives international acclaim and interest, and then is now and it facilitates more research, more archaeological studies, and today it's on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Of course, it was known to archaeologists, but Ara Güler's photographs really took it to a different level and started all this incredible international attention. And whilst Ara Güler is very well known for his black and white photography, in fact, by volume, we have an equal, if not maybe even more, color photographs by him. And that was in response to him adapting to the demands of the time as a photojournalist and the rise in color photography in general. And of course, he had to also participate in this motion. And he adapted very quickly and captured some incredible scenes, and here's a selection from his photographs of Anatolia, which is actually the subject of our current exhibition at our museum in Istanbul at the moment. He visited Anatolia, it was his terrain, throughout the years from 1957 to all the way to 2003, and really captured the magic of these lands, the stories and the heritage and the unspoken words so beautifully. And in our most recent exhibition, we're showing over 30 works that are being seen for the very first time from his Anatolia series. But as we know, Ara Güler was not just confined to Turkey, and of course he worked with European and American publications, but also he photographed many places throughout the world, and here are some examples from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. And also he took photographs of the Eritrean Civil War and PLO camps in Lebanon as well. And every time we dig into his archives, it's really incredible the breadth of his output and how deep and wide his influence and work of art has been. Another important subject and a very big theme in the archives and in Ara Güler's body of work is, of course, portraits. Portraits of literary figures, of artists, of cinematographers, politicians, you name it, both within Turkey and abroad. And here's a selection of some which we very much enjoy. And we also really loved, I think, and it comes across through these photos as well, that Ara Güler, through his incredible personality, his whim, and his sense of humor and intelligence, was always able to get the best out of his subjects and form indelible friendships throughout the course of his life. We also have portraits of Picasso, which Ara Güler took in 1971, where he spent 4 days with the artist and was tasked with photographing him for the cover of Skira's book, Picasso Métamorphose et Unité. And as a show of his gratitude, Picasso drew Ara Güler. We have a drawing by him dedicated to Ara Güler, signed and dated by Picasso. And he would often compare Ara Güler to his friend Cézanne and would call him Cézanne, which we think is very sweet response. Also, we have he photographed Marc Chagall again in 1971, and in fact, during their conversations, Ara Güler learned that Chagall had lived in Istanbul for 2 years, which he had not known. And he said, "Come, return next time you're here. I'll give you one of my paintings." But unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter, but had the opportunity to send Ara Güler a letter thanking him with, again, a little sketch on the portrait that he took. And here's some additional photographs of Yaşar Kemal, James Baldwin, Salgado, Tennessee Williams, and when Tennessee Williams came to Istanbul in the 50s for a streetcar named Desire, Ara Güler, of course, with his curiosity and all his charms and detective work, found out where Tennessee Williams was staying and invited his friend, a very famous playwright in Turkey, and together they had a wonderful night full of celebrations, which ended at a 2 a.m. Knock on the door of a hammam, where they opened the hammam and took some fun photos together. And another notable portrait is, of course, of Salvador Dali. Again, this is one of, and there's another one here. So it's just really remarkable every time we see this, just to see the connections that Ara Güler was able to form throughout his life. As I had mentioned earlier, we're also the custodians of Ara Güler's art collection. First and foremost, his photography collection, dating from daguerreotypes to works of his contemporaries who were his friends. And these were all, most of them are, in fact, gifts. So it's a testament, first and foremost, to Ara Güler's dedication to understand the history of photography and the respect that he had for it, and also the friendships that he cultivated with his contemporaries throughout his life as they exchanged their works. So, how does one begin to tackle the archive of such an artist? This is the first place where the archive is located. As I have mentioned, the activities around the archive began in 2017 at the Güler apartment in Beyoğlu in Istanbul. Some of you may have visited Ara Cafe. That's the same building where Mr. Güler's offices were. Two adjacent buildings, one of 4 floors, one of 6 floors. And the immediate priority was to first and foremost ensure the safety of the archive and to make sure that the archive was protected with the highest universal standards of archival materials and conservation practices. As such, a team led by Ms. Çağla Saraç was assembled of 3 conservators and additional team members to approach and take out the archive and move it in a more appropriate and, as I mentioned, a universal archival standards and museum standards. Incredible care was given to documenting everything, cataloging everything, almost as an archaeological dig. And in fact, one of our team members now is trained as an archaeologist, which we love, and he also helps us very much with the archaeological works in the collection. And the team labeled everything. Most of the archives, I believe, were on the 4th floor and 5th floor, the most well-known works. And they were labeled in this incredibly rigorous manner, as you will see. The boxes here, all the wall numbers, the shelf numbers, all marked, because the eventual goal is for this apartment, Ara Güler's apartment, to be turned into the permanent location of our museum. But of course, work has to be done to make sure everything is up to standards for the archive to be preserved there. Again, we can see some of Ara Güler's classification process. Thankfully, he was an incredible archivist, took amazing notes, which is very helpful for us. But only he knew about his archival system. He didn't have an assistant or he didn't have a system that we could reference. So therefore, it was incredibly important for us to ensure that we understood how Ara Güler looked at his own works. And we labeled, here again, everything is labeled by the floor number, wall number, the box, and we know how everything, what is in the content of each box, how many negatives there are, what correspondence came with it, so we can really be guided by the associations that he himself made. And this is how we approach our activities at the archive and museum. We're led by his choices and his process. Upon taking everything out, cataloging it, the archives were then moved into Bomontiada in Istanbul, where a special complex, again with the help of the construction of Doğuş Group, was created to the highest level of standards, materials, infrastructure, technology, and security. And upon bringing them to the archives, of course, another tremendous task started, which was the digitization of all the materials. And as there wasn't an available system within Turkey or even internationally where this archive could fit directly into one of those programs, a new system was created which reflected the needs and the very composition of the archive itself. And now we use it offline, but and every negative and print that was digitized was also then indexed. So now when we go and if we type in the Bosphorus or Galata Bridge, all the works that appear come up, and we're always constantly adding to those classifications because our intention is to facilitate research and make this accessible as he had intended. Research within the archives is one of our most important goals, and we are actively and very proud to be a resource for academicians, researchers, students alike, historians. Often specialists will come to us, academicians from public, private institutions. Let's say there's a restoration project, an archaeological project, or a historical record. They say, could you pull up the archive, see if there's anything here? Wow, okay, this is what we will reference this for our project. And as the visual historical record for Turkey, it's an incredible privilege to facilitate this. And as such, we also are working towards an online portal. Of course, we won't release everything, but we are actively working on that with the support of Doğuş Technology, and we will let you know when that is open to the public. Additionally, we conduct our own research, of course, to better understand Ara Güler's works in relation to his own output, but also amongst the history of photography, and we are actively cataloging the works, continuing to do so. This is one example of many of the research that we do into Ara Güler's works, and which the study of which is also at Sintezis. We hope you will explore it. And essentially, this photograph, which had hitherto been dated to 1955, it turns out was actually from 1962 when we looked at the contact sheets, and our conservation colleague realized the occupants of this ship, and then that it was Romeo Martinez. We won't spoil it, but it was redated. We also work very actively with the leading publishing houses in Turkey. Ara Güler, in his lifetime, developed very important friendships with the literary community. At first, he was just a young man who himself was very curious and, in fact, wrote short stories well before he photographed. And he admired the authors of his time, the playwrights, the journalists of his time. And quickly thereafter, he became one of their trusted friends throughout his life. And he jokes that, if I hadn't photographed the writers of Turkey, they would have been faceless. And in fact, he had a very funny way of expressing himself, but it's also very true. And to this date, the re-editions of the most notable authors' works in Turkey are still graced with the cover of the very photographs that Ara Güler took. So it's an incredible opportunity to continue his legacy and know that the introduction of these authors to the newer generations are with Ara Güler. In fact, our previous exhibition was dedicated to just portraits of literary figures, both in Turkey and abroad, consisting of 153 individuals. We also had to cut it a little short because we ran out of wall space. It's really, you can see from their expressions, the real friendships that Ara Güler formed. And in fact, there was an exhibition made about the behind the scenes of us putting together this show. And as of last night, we learned that we received one of the most prestigious awards of the journalistic community for this very exhibition. And this was our closing photo of our exhibition. And so we are delighted that our work was received very well by everyone. For the Ara Güler Museum, so the Ara Güler Museum opened on August 16, 2018, on Ara Güler's 90th birthday, and most importantly, with his participation. He cut the cord, and Ms. Saraç was there, of course, and therefore we worked together with him on our inaugural exhibition, and he saw, of course, the team worked together closely for 2 years, in every detail, and it was tremendous to celebrate, I'm sure, the opening with his presence. And unfortunately, a few months after, on October 17, 2018, he passed away, but he saw that his museum was in good hands. The museum is just one of our venues. We've had 8 exhibitions so far, but we also exhibit, of course, abroad and in other locations in Turkey. And as always, we want to take direction from Ara Güler's own process and his own selections. And we really strive hard to show the multifaceted personality, the artistic personality of Ara Güler. I alluded to this earlier. Before he took photographs, Ara Güler wrote short stories, some of which we will explore in tomorrow's event at the Photosynthesis Library. And just when he was 20 years old in his lycée years, he would write plays and short stories, and some of them actually received awards and were published in the newspapers of the time. And in 1996, a compilation of his short stories was produced by Ara's publishing house, with which we also work very closely. We Will Live After Babylon, where his writings were paired with the photos that he took. And you can really understand after reading his short stories that the characters referenced to him, that he referenced, really do find their space in the photographs that he took. And this one also is from the current exhibition. Ara Güler was also a huge fanatic of the cinema, and in fact in his youth he had aspirations to become a director and spend time in his father's friend's film studio, cutting film, putting them together. And when, unfortunately, then there was a fire, so he quickly abandoned and said, this is a little, too risky. So he, diverted his attention elsewhere to his photographic work. However, in 1973, he directed, wrote, and produced a film entitled Hero's End, which we have the great privilege that we will screen at the National Library, thanks to the efforts of the Synthesis team and the welcome of the National Institution, as the finissage of the exhibition. And Hero's End, it tells the story of the World War I battleship, Yavuz, and you'll see there's some surrealist qualities, very fascinating, and something that perhaps one might not predict from Ara Güler, which we hope you will enjoy. We also take great pride in taking care of Ara Güler's book maquettes. He was incredibly diligent and thorough with how he wanted his books to be, and incredibly active, and had a very specific vision for each book. Here you can see his maquettes, and these contain original darkroom prints where he annotates exactly which prints should go in what order, and in the absence of any prints he would sketch his photographs to such a liking that you can, even with one silhouette, oh, it's this photograph. So he had a wonderful command of his own output and another artistic ability once, because we are fortunate to know the artistic process, the editorial process, and the decision making of Ara Güler, over time we also take great care in introducing never before seen works from the archives to further his legacy and promote conversation about Ara Güler as an artist, and to reflect him with the widest possible audience, and hopefully contribute again to any research, and both aesthetically and professionally. On the left is an image from Izmir, which we love. It's so tender and again so reflective of his work. It's a true Ara Güler signature work. On the right was a photograph we introduced, I believe, 2 years ago, almost a year and a half ago. That's also featured in the Sintezis exhibition as from our records. And here again, and the one on the right we love very much, and this is from the Hatsopulo passage, which maybe you may be familiar with. It's in Beyoğlu, and in the very passage where Ara Güler's father's pharmacy was, so it has a personal connection as well. Outside of our own museum in Istanbul, we take great joy in forming partnerships with cultural institutions both within Turkey and abroad. In Turkey with private and public universities, cultural institutions, other museums. Abroad, most recently, we had a fantastic show in partnership with and at the FOAM Amsterdam Photography Museum. And at the very last section of that exhibition, we gave a portion to Ara Güler's personal works, his explorations never before seen, experimentations of his works, which were very well received. After FOAM, of course, we have Plovdiv, and we'll add Sofia to this lovely list. And with the presidency of the Republic of Turkey, we had exhibitions in New York, in Paris with Polka, in London with Sachi, in Rome, and also Kyoto. We also work with other organizations for some licensing for, very carefully considered commercial opportunities. And this is, for example, from a Cartier project we did with Maria Callas, the portrait, and we've worked with the History Channel, Arte TV, and where they did a documentary on Ara Güler's Turkey, went to the original site of Aphrodisias Geira, recreated his footsteps, then also of Istanbul at the very locations. And to just go back to the institutions in Turkey, often we have the great joy of exhibiting the works of Ara Güler in the very locations that they were taken. So it's just tremendous to be able to return to those locations. We are also publishers and have many books. We hope you will have the opportunity again to see some of them and discuss with us your comments at the event tomorrow. This is our inaugural publication, and it shares the same title of the inaugural exhibition, called "The Whistling Man," which was taken from one of Ara Güler's short stories. A character, he said, "You may recognize me. I'm the man who whistles at night." And so we thought that was very poetic as the first exhibition title, and we often, and where possible, try to use his phrases and his vocabulary in our efforts. Throughout his life, Ara Güler, there have been so many books by him, and those some of them only are highlighted here, which we hope to add to more and more with our museum publications. And as for our projections, we are a small team actually, and let me take this opportunity to also send our best wishes from the remaining team members in Istanbul. We have 6 additional team members there, and we are just working diligently to represent Ara Güler's legacy in as much as we can in the best way possible. So we will look forward to continued exhibitions in Istanbul, within Turkey and abroad. And our next exhibition in Istanbul is actually going to be devoted to the first ever photo reportage of Ara Güler, his series on the Kumkapı fisherman, which launched his career as a photojournalist. And there are some incredible works there and some abstract-looking photographs as well, which we will have a great joy in showing. And here's a photograph of Ara Güler while we were preparing for one of our exhibitions. And, you know, Ara Güler touched the lives of so many people. And almost every day we get a phone call, or when a visitor comes to our museum, they say, oh, I have a story with Ara Güler. I have a story with Ara Güler. Really, it's just incredible, the relationships that he was able to form and the friendships. And it's thanks to the museum and his works that we're able to both continue these relationships and also create new ones, like we are doing here in Bulgaria. And during our first time in Bulgaria, which was in Plovdiv a month ago, we crossed the border through Edirne, which is actually a very important place for Ara Güler because it's also the location of one of his most famous photographs, and sometimes he would call his signature photograph, at the old mosque there. And so before entering Bulgaria, we stopped by there to pay homage to Ara Güler, and so our exhibition in Bulgaria was able to facilitate this little homage to Ara Güler, of which we were very grateful. I would like to end by saying Ara Güler, as you may know, in Turkish, merhaba means hello, and Ara Güler would use merhaba interchangeably as hello and goodbye. So we would like to thank you all for being here and say merhaba.